What's up, losers? Today I've got another serving of fat acceptance silliness for you all to enjoy. Because, hey, masochism, right? But yeah, this is episode 29. We're closing in on 30 episodes. How exciting. Anyway, without further ado, let's get right into the posts.
It's criminal how much regret you feel after eating McDonald's.
Nah, you all just have internalized fatphobia. Get well soon.
Okay, so, I must admit that I can't really relate to this one. I've had plenty of McDonald's in my time, and I don't think I've ever regretted it that much. Like, as much as people like to bash McDonald's and call its food terrible. It's not like the food is actually poisonous or anything. It's mostly fine, somewhat enjoyable if not mind-blowing. And it's not entirely devoid of nutritional value. Overall, provided you're not going there for every meal or anything. You could do worse. Sometimes you do get a burger that is really sloppily assembled though. And that can be kinda gross. So overall I'd give the McDonald's experience like a 6 out of 10. My personal opinion of McDonald's and its food aside, I can see a bunch of reasons why someone else might regret eating at McDonald's. Some people claim to suffer from the mixed stomach ache, which sounds rather painful and unpleasant. Other people tend to overindulge when they go to McDonald's, leaving them out of pocket and over the daily calorie allowance, which is probably not a good feeling. And some people probably just feel bad because McDonald's is so poorly thought of in the popular consciousness. And this affects their view of things once the high of consumption wears off. At any rate, regretting a McDonald's meal doesn't mean one has internalized fatphobia. Because there are other reasons to regret it unrelated to weight. And because even if one does regret it because they're afraid to put on weight. Not wanting to be fat doesn't make one fatphobic. It just means that they would prefer to be thin. Which, I might add, there are some pretty compelling reasons for. You know, health and all that. But anyway, I've rambled on about McDonald's for way too long, haha. Next post.
In order to prevent eating disorders, we must make it safe for people to be fat. But our current eating disorder organizations seem to think that treating eating disorders and eradicating fat people go hand in hand. Make it make sense.
I'm going to flip this one back on you. Why don't you make it make sense? Who is trying to eradicate fat people? I don't see any fat concentration camps. I don't see any mass violence being committed against fat people. Where exactly is the eradication taking place? That sounds like something that we would all be interested in seeing. Oh, what's that? You mean people want to fight obesity by getting people to lose weight? Well, that's not really eradicating fat people, is it? Because it's not eradicating anyone. It's just fighting a public health issue by encouraging people to change the diet and lifestyle. Hardly the sort of catastrophic event that your description suggested. You might want to tone things down a little, because using that kind of ridiculous hyperbole might give someone the wrong idea. Eating disorder treatment does often require patients to accept being heavier than they are presently comfortable with. This is true, but that doesn't mean that eating disorder organizations need to normalize obesity. And it doesn't mean that doing so will be helpful in remedying the eating disorder either. If you show someone at a low weight a picture of someone who is obese, and tell them that it's okay to look like that, it's probably only going to scare them and make them less willing to recover. The best approach to helping people with eating disorders is to treat the underlying problems that led them to develop the coping mechanisms that they have, and to carefully coax them towards returning to a healthy weight, not to encourage them to just get fat LMAO, but I guess fat activists gonna do what fat activists gonna do. Heaven forbid that they just mind their own business. Size.
We know it's not really about health anyway. Because if it was, everyone would be yelling at thin people for glorifying unhealthy lifestyles, as underweight correlates with much worse health outcomes than obesity.
I feel like I shouldn't have to keep pointing this out, but not all thin people are underweight, especially not by the standards for thinness that most fat activists seem to use. Most are just at a more or less healthy weight, so it's a pretty cheap tactic to write off all health-based critiques of fat acceptance by pretending that thin people are just as unhealthy as fat people. Some thin people, sure, but if we're comparing the percentage of the population who are dangerously underweight to those who are obese, it's not even close. And in cases where you do have underweight people presenting their bodies as healthy and attainable, I think this is harmful too, and I would criticize these people just as I would health at every size. Despite what these fat activists might assume, critics of fat acceptance are not, for the most part, just interested in defending thinness and going after fat people. We want people to live healthy lives, and we see fat acceptance as a barrier to that. The reasons why more people focus on obesity than underweightness are, I presume, because as I've already pointed out, obesity is much more prevalent, and also, because most people are already opposed to pro-ANA. There's no real attempt to make it mainstream that I'm aware of. It's pretty much unanimously ignored or condemned by media outlets of any significance. And it generally maintains a lower profile than fat acceptance, which is constantly going after anyone and everyone for the most minor of supposed infractions. If people want to open a candid dialogue about the normalization of underweight bodies or unrealistic beauty standards, then I'm all for it. But when these issues are brought up as a clear effort to distract from the problem of obesity, and it's obvious that people are not engaging in good faith, then sorry, I'm not going to take the bait.
Fatphobia is really real. It's a socially acceptable hate crime.
How is it a hate crime? What is the crime? It sounds to me like whoever wrote this doesn't understand what a hate crime actually is. Because for something to be a hate crime, it actually has to be a crime. Shocking, right? Like racism, for instance, is not a hate crime. If someone commits a crime that is racially motivated, then it can be a hate crime. See the difference? If someone actually physically assaulted a fat person for being fat, that might be a hate crime. I'm not sure if it would ultimately be categorized as such, but there's a pretty reasonable argument for it. But I'm guessing that what this person is referring to under fatphobia is more along the lines of chairs being too small, not enough clothes being plus-sized, people wanting to go on diets. You know, the usual overblown fat acceptance laments. These, sadly, are not hate crimes. They're not crimes at all, actually, and in the grand scheme of things, they're not nearly as important as these self-obsessed fat activists seem to think they are. So once again I ask, nay, beg, please stop co-opting the language of serious political causes to use in your silly crusade. It's only distracting from real issues, and I hate to break it to you. But it's not making people take you any more seriously. So give it a rest. Well, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed the posts and my responses. Such as they were. What do you think? Is McDonald's alright, or do you regret having it afterward? Are eating disorder organizations trying to eradicate fat people? Are thin people glorifying an unhealthy lifestyle? Is fatphobia a hate crime? Let me know in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, or I'll make you eat nothing but McDonald's and you'll have a mixed stomachache for days. Just kidding, haha. Anyway, catch you later.